Hello everyone. Today we attempt to introduce our Student Facts project. Main intention of create a tool for teachers which makes college stuff less complicated and faster. And our student record system is to assist instructors and management employees modify and create information for students. To reach our purpose, we reviewed the most essential trouble this is present in these structures and we go to solve it. The main problem decide which steps that teacher needs most to do simpler and faster. First, we define our sub-problems by looking customer requests. We checked out the topics that instructors most work with in their intensive work condition and decomposed them to the most important aspects. These subjects are the ones shown in the presentation paper now. Listing of all students in lesson, listing of all classes and enrolled student quantity for every lesson, changing the grade of a teacher, adding an exam to a lesson, removing a student from a lesson, keeping tune of student information.
This is our first year diagram. In this diagram, we try to determine keys. For example, in teacher info, teacher name is selected for primary key, but it is not allowed to two different teachers with same name, so we update it in final ER diagram. We add teacher ID and select as primary key, and the problem is solved. First ER diagram does not involve class section. We add class letter as foreign key for lesson and lesson enrollment to connect lesson and student. We use exam enrollment to connect student and exam. In exam enrollment, exam ID and student ID are our foreign keys. In this ER diagram, our primary keys are student ID, lesson ID, class letter, and teacher ID. Our foreign keys are student ID, lesson ID, class letter, teacher ID, and exam ID. Which users can access to this app and how they can access? It's an app for teachers. Students cannot access it. Teachers can log in with their username and password. Username is not teacher name. Teachers can choose their own username and password for login when they are signed in.
After logging the system successfully, we can see some actions on system. And the first one of these actions is the list of students. Here we see the list of students page. We have the text field for input lesson ID. User enters the lesson ID, then click the view button to listing all students enrolled that lesson. Our purpose to make sign sheet for exam and absenteeism with listing all students for user purpose. We select student ID, name and surname from student, lesson and lesson enrollment tables, where the input lesson ID and ordered by the student IDs. Here we have second action, listing all lessons. In this page, we have the show button for listing all lessons. We listing lessons with ID and name, and we show total number of students enrolled that lessons. We select lesson ID, name and class letter, and count number of students by student IDs. From student, lesson, and lesson enrollment tables, as lesson ID primary key in lesson table, relation with foreign key 3 lesson ID in lesson enrollment table, then connect with student ID, which are student and lesson enrollment tables, grouped by lesson ID, lesson name, and class letter. As we show list all lessons, ascending order with lesson IDs.
This is our adding exam page. In this page, teachers can add exam to lessons and all students who take that lesson. To do that, first teachers must enter the lesson ID of the selected lesson. Then teachers should define and type the exam's informations like exam type, exam date, exam hour, and exam class. After that, there's two buttons that users can click. The clicking order is important. Teachers must click Add button first and then they can click Add To button. Otherwise, it will cause an error. Now, let's look at the SQL queries of this UI. When we click Add button, first query is going to work. This gives us ability to insert user inputs into the exam table attributes. Lesson ID, exam type, exam date, exam hour, and exam class are the attributes of the exam table. But most important attribute is missing, our primary key exam ID. Exam ID is also the attribute of exam table. Exam ID is automatically given by the system because we set auto increment to exam ID in PHP Summary, add button, add exam into the exam table. But we have to assign exam to corresponding students too. Add To button helps us to assign exam to corresponding student. Let's look how it works. When the user clicks the Add To button, the second query starts working. As we mentioned before, exam ID has auto increment. So the maximum value in the exam ID is represent our new added exam. We insert the exam ID, which has the maximum value in the exam ID column, into the exam enrollment table. Next question is how we select which students should have this exam. We use lesson table as intermediary. In first query, we add exam into the lesson. But in this query, we look which students are taking that lesson. And we use this information to select which student we must insert into the exam enrollment table. This is how adding exam page works. Next page is our update grade page. In this page, teachers can change or give a grade of a student in an exam. First, users, actually in that case, teachers, select which student and which exam. For to select which student, teacher type the student's student ID. For to select which exam, teacher type the exam ID. Finally, teachers type the new grade of a student. Now let's look how it works. When we click Update button, first query will work. Point of a corresponding student's exam is holding in the exam enrollment table as exam point in our database. Also, student ID and exam ID is in the exam enrollment table too. We just equalize input exam ID with exam ID and input student ID with student ID. Then we set input exam point will be the exam point which provides the condition in the where statement. We think that teachers cannot remember all the exam IDs of their exams. Actually, this is why we add show button. Show button provides teacher for to find exams easier. Just typing student ID and clicking the show button is enough. Now teachers can see all exam ID, exam point, exam type, lesson ID and student ID for the selected student. Now let's look at its query. We select all attributes that we want to show in the table. The most important condition in here is to equalize input student ID and student ID in the student table. Then we use foreign keys and primary keys to find selected attributes.
The user, the teacher, enters the student ID of the student he wants to delete from a particular lesson and the lesson ID he wishes to delete and deletes the student from the lesson and all the exams they are connected to he wishes to delete. So how does the link between the two work in the background? The exam the student is affiliated with are in the exam enrollment and the lesson that the student is affiliated with are in the lesson enrollment. We want to delete the student from those tables. Nothing will depend on that lesson in the student's lesson enrollment. We state this in the first part. In the second part, we will apply the conditions to ensure that nothing is deleted. Aspects are real. For example, we identify student IDs 410 and lesson ID is 202. The purpose of using the ER diagram here is to find the lessons that students 410 has. As a result of this process, all lessons of student ID 410 are listed. We want to delete the students from lesson ID 202. How do we find lesson ID 202 among all lessons? We find it by using the places that the lesson is connected to. We have done our process to delete students 410 from lesson enrollment. So how do we delete it from exam enrollment? It is connected to exams now. Then we find the exams that the lessons depends on. After that, we delete the students from the exams he has registered for that lesson.
Here we have achievement page of our user interface, where all the certification data held about the student, such as the name, the surname, the certification type, the year that have earned, and so others. Then on the left side we have some queries. First we take the name, the surname, the certification type, the semester average, the term time from two tables, which are student table and achievement table, by using the student ID in order to connect these two tables. Next, we have absent table that shows the data about absenteeism by given input, which is here student ID. User can enter student ID and then just click on show in order to list all the data. Similar to the shown query before, this query takes the name and the surname from the student table. Moreover, the absent type, the absent date, and the absent reason from the absenteeism table by using the primary key student ID. Now I will introduce the demo of our project. This is the very first page of our user interface. In order to access to the system, a user must enter the username and the password correctly. If user don't type them correctly, an error will be shown in the screen, like this. Otherwise, an welcome message will be shown on the screen. When we successfully access to the system, this page welcomes us. Let's move on to the list of students page. Here, user must enter the lesson ID in order to list all the students enrolled in that lesson. Let's say we have lesson 405. I'll just type it here and click on view. Now we can see all the students enrolled in the lesson 405, which is, in this situation, we have only 2 students. Next, we have the list of lessons page, which shows all the lessons in the current semester. In order to show all the lessons, user must click on show button and the system will show all the lessons automatically. This page adds an exam to the system by entering the lesson name, exam type, exam date, exam hour, and exam class. Let's say in this situation we have these datas. For lesson name, for this, and for exam type, let's say this. For exam date, this. For exam hour, this. And for exam class, let's say this. Then we need to click on these buttons. To check if we have done it correct and change the grade of that exam, let's move on to the update grade page. to check the previous action, we have this student which has the number 410, and I'll just click on show. As you can see, it is added to the system. Now we can change the grade of that exam simply by entering the exam ID, which is here in the table. I'll just look at the table and write it. Then we can write the new grade, let's say 100, and then I'll just click on update button, and then again I'll just click on show button. As you can see, it is updated. Now let's move on to the trophy page. Here user can list all the achievements by entering the student ID, let's say 410, and then just click on the show button. Then the system will shows all the achievements of the student 410. Now we have absent table, which shows all the absenteeism data about the student which is taken by user. Let's say again we have 410, and all the information about the student 410 is listed on the system. Let's move on to the last page of our user interface. Before we move on to the last page, we have update grade page. Let's say we have the student 410. These are the exams of the student 410. Let's say we want to delete this student from the math class. Now we have the remove student page. This page remove a student from the database by taking the lesson ID and the student ID from the user. It also deletes exams related with the student. Let's say for lesson ID 202 and for student ID 410, and then just click on delete button. Let's check if we did correctly. Now as you can see, it is all deleted from the database. That was all. Thank you for listening.